one of the later
But
poems, higher
it's
powers of
again, like
Buckminster Fuller.
I just bring it up because it's so spooky. You know, in one of my talks with Alex, like we talk about McLuhan and Archibaldi, I think, in the same conversation. So it seems like an absolutely kind of logical sort of um, assortment of figures. They're sort of these. You mean you have kind of like poem to poem, kind of these different. I think there are these kind of spectres who haunt the text of kind of the grand and the glorious. I mean, you have McLuhan, but Thoreau is kind of a person who's repeatedly mentioned,
Yeah.
and like Walden is mentioned quite a few times. It's almost like sort of book to book. You kind of you're sort of bringing you're kind of having this sort of I don't know, like a seance with all these sort of different sort of figures throughout history. Like, for instance, like with Neville's, Tristram Shandy and the Prisoner and what have you. It's almost kind of quite pop art the way that you can merge these things together so seamlessly.
Well, I don't do Dick and Jane, so you know, I don't do see Dick run, see
I
Jane
do
dream.
mention I'd quite like to see like your take on Hawaii Five O, if that ever happens. You know, an episode of Baywatch directed by Dan Schneider. That would be quite funny.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have again, you just have to toss a lot of stuff, and some stuff doesn't make it. Some stuff, you know, if I'm 17% of the way through, I think, well, maybe about 62%, 70% of the way through the novel, I should have something happen. Then as I get there, and I don't mean chronologically now, but as I get to about 70% full, I'm like, you know, I don't really need that anyway, so let's fuck that idea. Let me bring something
Mm.
else in. And again, and I said this many times, this book, let's see, I finished it in early December, early mid-December. I think I started it
Mm.
in early, well, mid-August, started gathering notes. So it took 4 months to write this book, which is about a little under 300,000 words,
Jesus fucking
285,000.
Christ.
So it took me about four
Right.
months. But uh, in that time, lots of things happen at work. You know,
Mm.
at work, a customer says something. I have a memory about something. I get into an argument with someone online. Something Jessica goes on a tirade or something, and you know,
But this
those,
is why I said flourish at the beginning, because normal fucking artists, man. You know, like we going through the day-to-day grind and commutes and sort of relationship problems. You know, like that cuts close to home. Like, yeah, we just get like bulldozed by that stuff, and we we're too tired at the end of the day to do our
and
art. But like
this is one of the
you turn it
things.
all into art, man. I mean, that's
Well,
flourishing to me.
well, this is one of the things that again gets back to these people that I mentioned that they either can't or they don't want to, or those that have the ability sometimes abdicate it. Those that don't have the ability sometimes pine for it when they should move on to something else. Uh, and
Don't you think though that it's kind of sometimes a bit fraught though, Dan? Because sometimes, not always, and maybe it's a bit of a cliche, but you'll get these young artists, or even kind of sort of artists in their sort of 30s sometimes, who kind of are quite middling. They're nothing very impressive. But then they come back a couple of years later, or however much time, then they're really good. I mean, it happens more often than not. Or well, not more often than not, but it happens here and there. I mean, like, do you think sometimes it is just the case that I think I've heard you somewhere say before that kind of sometimes it is the kind of artists who just make the par who can shoot up sometimes, whereas those wunderkinds, those prodigies, they kind of eventually fall into expectations of diminishing returns.
well, the thing with prodigies is that they are not necessarily. A prodigy is someone who achieves at an early age something that someone at a later age could achieve. But a prodigy doesn't necessarily signal greatness. The fact that someone like Mozart or Beethoven were both prodigies and then became, if you want to use the term, which I don't like, a genius at their art, is very rare. Most often, you're going to have
Mm.
these prodigies, like there was the girl called the pint-sized Picasso, and she if you look at her stuff at 30 or 35, 40, whatever she is now, from what she was doing when she was 7 or 8, there's not that much difference.
Mhm.
Because she, number one, didn't have the talent. But even if she did, when you overpraise someone at such an early age, what incentive do they have to improve? Now, with someone like me, I'm self-motivated. Most people aren't self-motivated.
Mm.
Jessica, for example, as you well know, she always wants to be famous and rich, and she wants to have people say she's the great artist and this and that.
She realized she needs a bit of pepping up sometimes.
She does, and I try to give her pep, but there's a difference between pepping her from across the Atlantic and pepping her from across the living room.
I'll take your word for it. But last question, Dan, and it's a good one before I have to scuttle off to my dinner.
Okay.
You mentioned before that you've already moved on to this. You're already planning this series about Jason and the Argonauts. Like most writers, when they finish a novel, you come up to them and you say, "Oh, Maestro, what are you working on next?" They groan, they roll their eyebrows. They go, next. You should be glad that I've just written this fucking thing, and I'm you've just finished this novel, and like now you're on to the next thing. Like, I mean, when did that happen? Did that happen like before the thing was ended? Like, was it already on the move?
Well, I have planned out things to come. I mean, I still want to fit. I still have to do my third musical, and I have ideas, but it's just not coming right now. I have two two more plays to do in my Tetramal about some evil people I knew. But for example, I've got ideas for the Argonauts. I've got a Catherine Bathory, Elizabeth Bathory play, and Catherine the Great play that I'm going to do because I want to do some figures of history.
Are you intent to do a play on every famous person who's ever lived?
No, but just those that I find interesting. For example, I did this play on when the Vikings came over and Eric the Red's daughter encountered Mi'kmaq people in the Pacific in the maritime provinces of Canada, and it was told from
Yeah.
the perspective of the maritime Indians rather than the Vikings. So the Vikings don't
Ah,
speak.
yes, I've heard you mention this. Yeah.
They can't be intelligible. And I think I sent it. You probably got that play when I sent it around. But so I'm going to do
All
one
right, I'll
probably
look
on
at
the Vikings and the Sami. I'm going
it.
to add, there are lots of things. I still got 30 or 40 play ideas from 2017 when I first started writing plays that are more personal. But I said I want to move away right now, do these impersonal historical things mostly. Although I'm using this Chloe character, there's this great actress Chloe Lanier that I've mentioned before from this
Yes.
soap opera that I write.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to goddamn interview her, and I can't get through her people. But I did. By the way, I did Megan Follows. I've got a follow up in spring with her agent. I hope hopefully by summer maybe I can
Mm.
interview Megan Follows. But nonetheless,
Sure.
you just have to keep bubbling these ideas. That gives you something to look forward to. One of the things that I failed to do to get Jessica to do is to think farther ahead. Jessica will be like, what am I going to do next? I'd say, keep your mind on things. I mean, she's been writing these great reviews for Alex's website, and they're much better than what she did. Not that she was bad years ago, but they're more poetic. They're more artistic, and even as a critic
Mm-hmm.
of the individual pieces, she's better than she was. And I said, that's good. She's writing poems. I went through
They're
almost
always
50 of her poems.
superbly written.
I went through 50 of her poems there, and she's writing a few more, and then we'll put the book together for her. But I mean, regarding this book, again, you have to be able to drop it and get on to the next thing, and just keep doing it and doing it and doing it.
Do you ever feel like you have to take a break from writing?
I
Do you
did
ever feel that writing has exhausted,
when my mother died in 2009. There was about 9 months I didn't write. It wasn't because I was so
Wow.
broken up over her. It was just I reached a point there. I had already written Tumbleweeds and written a few other big books and whatnot, and that was right before I started doing a few books before the Vincetti brothers. And it just I don't know. It just felt like that. But the older I get, the shorter my time in this realm gets. So it's like I'll rest when I'm dead.
I think there's a character even in the Grand and the Glorious. There's just so much I only just finished it the other day, so it's all clattering around in my head. There's a character, I think it may have even been Sally Tranghese, who says kind of like, if only I had more time, if only I did more.
Yeah.
Do you worry about that? Do you worry, like, I mean, not to be mordant here, but like, do you ever feel like you're going to be like looking up, like going like all the things you didn't do? Like, it's like, do you feel like does it compel you in this way?
Yes, I mean Jessica is looking for a new job. She doesn't like her job. You know, she's hoping that someday Alex will start a press and she can work for him as an editor. But
Mm,
as I say, you're always going to be that way. I think of the 2,000 hours or so a year for all the decades that I've worked, even when I've been unemployed briefly here and there. Uh, you know, I could, how much more could I have written? How much more could I have done? How much quicker could I have developed? You know, if I had started writing poetry before the age of 19, if I had had English teachers, if I had had teachers that had known that I was bright, that I was creative,
mm,
but they're not, they can't. They can't say, so
mm.
I can't, you know, on my deathbed, yes, I'm going to say, you know, if only I had done this, if only this person I tried to help had made it. I mean, you know, some people, they, you know, if you know, like someone like you're going through a hard time recently on a personal
Hmm.
level. Some other people, they'll go through these hard times and they last for 2 or 3 years and they don't talk to you, or they drop you, and
Yeah.
it's like, why? Get back, do what you got to do. And I've told this to all of those people that I mentioned to you earlier. I told them, if you know that you have to, you grab it by the fucking balls and you don't let go, and you just fucking pull that sucker to the ground and
Mm,
you show what's in command. You have,
mm.
this is where I disagree with Alex totally. Alex doesn't believe in
Because
free will. I'm a free will.
but I know that you're atheistic, but you did have a religious upbringing from what I understand. I had a religious upbringing too, like, and I sometimes think art is not a substitute for religion, but it almost is the same kind of it's something that is kind of it's another thing higher, more important, that kind of almost correct.
The difference between art and religion. Religion is like a parasite that is sucking things out of you. With art, you're willingly
Yeah.
giving things out to the world. That's the difference.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I pretty much apostatized as well, so I won't argue with you there. But yeah, I feel like it is a kind of, it's got to be about passion, and it's got to be about something more than a kind of a positive return in this life. But and even so, kind of like um, what
Well,
we need to do,
I've said
Dan?
this many
Like,
times
but
before. You know, Shakespeare isn't the
yeah.
dude under Avon. Shakespeare is the words
Mm,
that live. And I'm not a great Shakespeare fan, but I don't diss him unnecessarily like a lot of other writers have. I think he's a great
mm,
writer, and he certainly should have his place forever in the human canon. But he shouldn't be this all-encompassing thing. And every great artist should have that kind of a place. Uh, it just takes a while for people to get there because the average person, and even today, there's more things to distract. You know, there were no video games to, you know, people could actually read uh, uh,
mm.
Melville and Shakespeare 100 years ago. They didn't even have records to play. You'd have to buy a piano or you know, something if you were middle class to get even some music. Sheet music was, you'd have to learn to whistle from sheet music. I mean, now there's so much stuff. So the arts, in that sense, are even more insulated from the rest of society. But what are you going to do? In the end, they're still going to be there. In 1,000 years, I firmly believe that my writing or Jessica's writing or great artists that are
But
alive now are
the
going to be
monk
more
or
relevant
the
than the
samurai
crowd.
is somewhat separate from society, kind of somewhat, it's kind of it's a it's a kind of a frightening thing to be an artist in a way. Like, I mean, not to like commiserate, as well, but like, you're slightly a distance from the world as you look down on it, and you almost have to. It's almost not enough. You have to create or what have you. I mean, I think people will kind of like look back at kind of your work down there and just wonder like how the fuck you did it, like, where you found the time, where you found like the resolve. It's a superhuman effort, and like this book is another addition to that. And we're all incredibly grateful for like like although I've gotten a little bit carried away at some points of the interview, and obviously I'm very passionate about your work. I think kind of the thing that still appeals to me, like to me above and beyond anything, beyond is just how you're able to bring everything together with such ease. and like how you're able to just as Von Gogh said, kind of sort of just bring sort of put things together and to make things sort of differently. And like this is what I find great about Cezanne. It's what I find great about Beethoven, and it is, you know, to a degree what I find great about Shakespeare. And you know, do you feel that do you feel like you're ever going to sort of revisit kind of these characters in Grand and Glorious again, or is this a kind of a turning point now in it, or do you see it in that way?
You know, I other than the superstar Billy Graham novel, I've got the ideas for a World War II novel, and I probably will mention again. I mean, they all my whole fictive universe is a cohesive universe, so uh,
Mm,
you know there will be mentions. If I have a novel set in the 1950s, someone might mention, "Oh, don't go shop in that, or don't eat in that restaurant that's run by those criminals, the Maravelli family, or something." But
mm.
you know, other than little cameo appearances, I
It's
don't
still
know. But
expanding then, the universe. It's still going out,
until I drop dead.
or until you start writing Baywatch.